Centuries ago, in the heart of the Igbo lands, there was a village where men were as strong as iron, but their hearts carried a secret grief. No, this isn't a story of kings or gods, this is the story of a girl named Ikin, the warrior who was never supposed to be. Umuagu, a name spoken with pride and fear. Its warriors were tall, dark-skinned, and fierce, men forged by battles and pain. Long before Ikin was born, tragedy struck the land. A strange plague swept through, stealing away most of their women, wives, sisters, and children. The cries of mothers faded. The laughter of children vanished. The men were left with swords in their hands, but emptiness in their homes. They knew if they didn't find brides, the Umuagu bloodline would die. So, they went to a nearby village to seek wives. Their offer was tempting, sacks of pure gold, crafted by their own skilled hands. You see, the Umuagu warriors weren't just fighters, they were goldsmiths, turning fire and metal into beauty. The visiting king agreed to give them 100 women, but greed is a dangerous thing. Days later, he raised his army against them, hoping to take back the gold and keep his women. But the warriors of Umuagu fought like spirits. They won. The defeated king swore never to deal with them again. 20 years passed, and Ikin was born. From birth, she was different. Broad-shouldered, flat-chested, and quick to fight, she didn't fit the mold of the delicate maidens around her. Her skin glistened like polished ebony under the sun, her hair short and stubborn. The other girls mocked her, tomboy, they called her half-man. But Ikin didn't care. She could outrun most boys, wrestle with men, and still fetch water for her mother before the sun set. Yet, deep inside, there was a quiet ache, the same longing every young woman in Umuagu carried, the dream of being chosen, loved, and seen as more than just a fighter. One day, that chance came, but not in the way anyone expected. A messenger ran into the village, shouting of danger. The prince of the neighboring kingdom had been ambushed in the forest by unknown warriors. Panic spread. After all, helping the prince could mean breaking old tensions with his father's kingdom. But Ikin didn't wait for permission. She grabbed her spear and sprinted into the forest. She found him surrounded by 3 masked men. Without thinking, she struck, her spear slicing the air, her hands moving like she had trained for this all her life. She fought like a whirlwind, and the attackers fled, leaving the prince bloodied but alive. As she knelt beside him, their eyes met. He saw not just a rescuer, but someone impossible to forget. The prince returned to his father's palace with more than wounds on his body, he carried a new fire in his heart. He told the king how a young woman from Umuagu had saved him. The king, old and cautious, frowned at the name Umuagu. The history between their people was bitter, poisoned by war and betrayal. But a life saved is a debt owed, and the king ordered a message of thanks to be sent to Ikin's family. In Umuagu, the news spread like wildfire. Girls who had mocked her now whispered in corners. It's a lie, some said. She's making up stories to sound important. But deep inside, they knew this was the kind of story that could change a life forever. Then, weeks later, the impossible happened. A royal chariot rode into the village. 2 guards stepped down, announcing that the prince himself had come to see Ikin. When she appeared, wearing nothing but her simple wrapper and unpolished hair, the prince smiled like he had been waiting for this moment. The villagers stared in disbelief. This was not how fairy tales worked. Princesses were supposed to be soft and delicate, not battle-scarred and strong. Back in the palace, the visit sparked whispers, and whispers grew into storms. The king's advisor, a sly man named Okoro, was quick to see trouble. His daughter, Amoka, was the jewel of the court, fair-skinned, graceful, trained to charm. Okoro had spent years grooming her to be the prince's bride, sealing his family's power. But now, a girl from a warrior village threatened all of that. That night, Okoro spoke to the king in private. Your Majesty, think carefully. A marriage to an Umuagu girl will stir old wounds. Let the prince choose someone who will strengthen alliances, not dig up old grudges. The king hesitated. He loved his son but could not ignore the advisor's warning. So he announced a grand event. In 1 moon's time, the prince would choose his bride from among the maidens of the land. The court erupted in excitement. For the young women, this was a chance to become queen. For Amoka, it was her birthright. Amoka's mother, sensing that her daughter's moment had come, took no chances. In the days before the selection, she personally coached Amoka, teaching her the most graceful dance steps, reminding her to hold her head high, to smile only at the right moments, and to keep her eyes locked on the prince. She braided her hair with gold threads, oiled her skin until it glowed, and draped her in the finest wrapper in the land. At last, the day came. The palace courtyard shimmered with color and perfume. Drummers played a deep, steady beat as the maidens stepped forward one by one. They danced, sang, and showcased their beauty for the prince. When it was Amoka's turn, she moved like a vision. Her dance was flawless, each step perfect, her wrists jingling with beads, her body swaying in hypnotic rhythm. The crowd murmured in admiration. Even the king smiled, believing the choice was obvious. But the prince only watched, his expression calm. When her dance ended, he bowed his head slightly and moved on. Finally, the drum stopped. The king rose. "My son, the maidens await your choice." "I choose none," the prince said firmly. Gasps filled the air. The king's face hardened. "My heart," the prince added, "already belongs somewhere else." Okoro's pride cracked like dry clay. His wife clutched Amoka's hand. His heart burned, and that night, a plan began to form. If the prince's heart would not come to Amoka, then Okoro would force it there. The village buzzed with gossip the morning after the selection ceremony. At the market, women traded more than vegetables, they traded stories. "They say he rejected them all," one murmured, dropping peppers into a basket. "Even the girl who danced like a goddess," another replied. "Beauty is nothing if a man's heart is elsewhere." Amoka's name slipped into nearly every conversation. Her performance had been flawless, steps light as air, waist swaying like silk in the wind, yet the prince's head had turned from her just as it had from the others. Her mother moved about their hut in silence, hiding the disappointment in her eyes. Her father took the blow harder. He had been certain she would be chosen, certain her moment had come. That night, he sat outside staring into the fire, saying nothing. Amoka tried to act as though it didn't matter, but when sleep finally came, her pillow was damp. In the palace, the prince returned without explanation. Guards and servants learned quickly not to ask. Whispers filled the corridors, perhaps he already loved another, perhaps there was a reason beyond beauty or dance. A week later, the village appeared to settle back into routine, but the stares Amoka received at the market carried a quiet pity. Her father avoided going altogether. One evening, as the sun dipped low, Okoro called his daughter to the back veranda. "Amoka," he said, leaning forward, voice sharp with ambition, "this is our chance. The prince will soon choose a bride, and I want you to be that bride." Her mother emerged from the kitchen, voice softer but with the same intent. "Your father is right. Men like the prince must feel you in their bones. Make him see you as the only woman in the world." That night, her mother handed her a small calabash wrapped in red cloth, a charm of herbs, oil, and coral bead. "This will make his eyes linger on you. Wear it close to your skin whenever you're near him." From then on, every move Amoka made was calculated. Okoro placed her in the prince's path, banquets, charity events, strolls in the palace gardens. Whispers in the court grew. The prince was seen with her often, laughing, leaning closer, almost as though she were already chosen. The king's council began to push. Her family's respected lineage and Okoro's influence as a trader made her an attractive choice. One evening, the queen sent for her son. "You have spent enough time with this girl," she said. "The people are beginning to talk. It is time to settle down with her." The prince sat in silence, the weight pressing heavy on his shoulders. He liked her, but something inside held back. Still, with the palace buzzing and the elders nodding, it seemed marriage was no longer a matter of if, but when. The days that followed were a storm of whispers and watchful eyes. Amoka's presence seemed to blossom in the prince's life like a carefully tended flower. She was everywhere, at public banquets, in the marketplace when he passed through, even at the edge of the palace courtyard during evening strolls. Her smile was a trap, her laughter a net. And slowly, the prince began to feel caught. But in the village, not everyone was fooled. One humid night, as the moonlight spilled across Okoro's compound, a faint, strange scent drifted into the air, sharp, earthy, almost sweet. Mama Ngozi, the midwife, happened to be passing by. Her nostrils flared, her brow tightened. She knew that smell. It was the scent of juju herbs. The very next morning, while Amoka was away at the river, two women entered her room. Tucked beneath her sleeping mat, they found a small calabash wrapped in red cloth, the same her mother had given her. Inside was a dark oil, glistening with crushed coral beads, and a few dried leaves known to bind a man's desire. By midday, the news had spread like wildfire. The village square filled with murmurs of witchcraft and desperation. The council elders summoned Okoro and his family. The evidence was placed before them, the herbs heavy with the stench of guilt. Okoro tried to speak, but the chief elder's voice cut through the air like a blade. "This is a grave offense. You sought to bend the will of the royal bloodline. Such deceit cannot remain among us." The verdict was swift: banishment. That evening, Amoka and her parents were marched to the edge of the village. No one touched them, but the weight of every stare burned into their backs. With nothing but a few bundles and the shame of their names, they vanished into the night. Back in Umuagu, Ikin kept to herself. She had heard of the grand selection, heard that the prince had rejected every maiden, but she also heard of Amoka's growing closeness to him. She told herself it didn't matter. Princes belonged to palaces, not to warrior girls. Yet some nights, lying in the dark, she wondered if their meeting in the forest had meant something, or if it had been nothing more than a passing moment in his life. Then fate stepped in. The prince was sent to oversee a trade dispute between Umuagu's goldsmiths and a neighboring town. And so, for the first time since the forest, he saw her again. She was at the marketplace, bargaining over yams. No gold threads in her hair, no perfume, just Ikin, strong and unshaken. When she saw him, her eyes widened in surprise. She knelt out of respect, but he quickly told her to rise. They spoke briefly, the crowd watching. And in that short exchange, the prince knew. This was the woman who had stood in the face of danger for him, not for gold, not for favor, but because it was who she was. That night, he could not sleep. The thought of marrying Ikin rang in his head, clear and unstoppable. In the palace, the queen and the king wasted no time calling their son. "This matter is closed," the queen said. "The girl and her family are gone. We will begin the search for another bride." But for the first time in weeks, the prince spoke with fire in his voice. "No, mother. No more searches, no more dances. My heart is not a prize for your choosing. It belongs to someone already, the woman who saved my life." The king's eyes narrowed. "You speak of a king?" "Yes," the prince said, his voice steady. "She risked her life for mine. Her spirit is pure. If I am to marry, it will be her, or no one." Silence filled the chamber. Then, slowly, the king leaned back in his chair. "If this is truly your wish, it shall be granted." The prince's heart thundered. At last, the path was clear, and this time, it led straight to Ikin. The prince's third visit to Umuagu was different. There was no official trade mission this time, no dispute to settle, no carefully worded excuse. Only truth. He came for her. Word spread ahead of him like wind before a storm. By the time the royal guards rode through the dusty path into the village, people had gathered in clusters, whispering, craning their necks to see. Children clung to their mothers. Old men leaned on their staffs. Ikin was at the far end of the square, basket in hand, when the crowd shifted. Her heart quickened as she saw him dismount. The gold of his tunic caught the sun, but it was the way his eyes searched the crowd that made her feet root to the ground. When he called her name, it was not loud, but it carried, like a drumbeat in the chest. She moved forward slowly, each step measured, until they stood face to face. Ikin, he said, voice steady but edged with something deeper, I owe you more than my life. I owe you my heart. Gasps rippled like wine through dry leaves. Chiefs exchanged glances. Her mother covered her mouth in shock. He went on, his gaze never leaving hers. I have seen beauty dressed in gold, and grace performed for the court, but I have never seen courage like yours. If you will have me, I want you as my bride. The silence that followed was so heavy it seemed even the birds had stilled. For a heartbeat, Ikin wondered if she had imagined his words. But then his hand reached for hers, warm and certain, and the truth of it flooded through her. Back in the palace, the queen's voice was cool and sharp. A warrior girl from Umuagu. She will never fit in the court. But the king, remembering the river and the son he might have buried, spoke at last. If she is the one he chooses, then she is the one he shall have. Preparations began. Messengers carried the news far and wide, the prince would wed a woman from Umuagu. Some called it madness. Others called it fate. On the morning of the wedding, the palace was a living canvas of color and sound. Drums rolled like distant thunder. Ivory horns sang bright notes into the air. Dancers whirled in bursts of cloth and beads. Ikin arrived not draped in foreign silks, but in a deep red wrapper, the color of strength, with gold beads lying against her collarbone. Her hair was woven simply, and in her hand she carried her spear. Not as a weapon, but as a reminder of the day she had stood between the prince and death. When she walked through the palace gates, the crowd stilled. This was no ordinary bride. This was a warrior and their future queen. Before the elders, the prince took her hands. His voice rose over the drums. Before the ancestors, before my people, I swear to honor and protect you, as you once protected me. Ikin's eyes shone, not from tears, but from the unshakable knowledge that she had been seen, truly seen, for who she was. The elders blessed them, the crowd roared, and the drums erupted into a wild, joyful storm. And so, the warrior who was never meant to be, became the queen who would never be forgotten.